Hello. So, I am going to do something a little bit different this time, as the introduction or the beginning of Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, the sixth book. It is packed with a lot of information, much more packed compared to the first five books that come before it. So, I'll be doing the introduction to give some more context and more information in this video, and on the next one, I'll do the review. So, starting from the very beginning, and it'll make sense later on, possibly in the next video. But we follow the story of Harry Potter, a boy whose parents recently died at at his age of 1, and he is taken to live with the Dursleys. Now, on his 11th birthday, he comes to learn that he's a wizard and that there's a magical school which he's enrolled in since very early on. When he goes to school, he begins learning that he's not just anyone. I mean, he has a certain fame associated with him due to things that are not really his doing. It's just his story is what is known and is even part of the modern history, if you will. And so on the first year, he different from when he was going to the regular schools because of Dudley, who is a bully, but he begins getting new friends. He learns that he's actually good at a sport called Quidditch, and that his father was also a Quidditch player when he was at that school. And not only that, but he begins to realize about his potential and his abilities. He does eventually find out about this kind of scheme on stealing the Philosopher's Stone, which is basically a stone that allows the user to become immortal, more or less. On the second book, he obviously has to go back. He gets into trouble due to a house elf, and people believe that he's the one who's actually doing the magic. But we start looking at the tones of there's some sort of superiority complex among wizards versus anyone else, and that includes even non-humans. And he kind of does discover this underlying story of Voldemort, or Tom Riddle as his real name was, and that he also went to school, and he comes to realize that even though the thought is, okay, you're in Slytherin, you're bad, you're in any other house, you're good, it's a little bit more complex like that, and that Voldemort, at one time, he had to be a student, and he was. On the third book, he does learn very late on that he has a godfather who was falsely imprisoned, and he also does discover a little bit more about the history, the story of his own father, James Potter, and his group of friends at that school. Not only were they popular, but they accomplished quite amazing feats, such as becoming animagus, or anime guy. On the fourth book, he is unknowingly entered into the competition. This is also when he learns about the group called Death Eaters, who were the supporters, they were the minions of Lord Voldemort. Not only that, but he starts also to kind of discover that some of the people who are in places of power, that say at schools, such as Professor Snape or the headmaster Karakov from Durmstrang, and people in other places, while they have a past history of having been Death Eaters themselves. However, the reason why not all Death Eaters are in the prison of Azkaban is that, you can't know who was forced, who was coerced, who was under a spell, and not acting on their own accord, and so there is that. But this is also the same year where Harry, he's about to die at the last challenge of the competition. However, Voldemort, it didn't happen, obviously. Voldemort does get a drop of his blood, which completes a spell which gives him back his body. So now he's in his former glory. However, since Harry was able to escape, he was able to notify others that he's back. Now, on the next book, we do find that nobody believes him, or rather yet, the Ministry is on this PR campaign of discrediting Harry Potter and Dumbledore. Why? Because they don't want the magical community to go down this rabbit hole or kind of get depressed, or they just don't want things to go back to how they used to, so they want to avoid any climate of fear. And so anything that would be considered as fear-mongering, they want to avoid it, and the way they do it is by basically calling Dumbledore crazy and Harry Potter as this traumatized, attention-seeking boy. Now, in this same year, we also discover that as there were Death Eaters who supported Voldemort, there was also the Order of the Phoenix who supported Dumbledore. And they were the ones who were actively fighting against him the previous time. We also discover that there is a prophecy that links Harry Potter with Voldemort, and it is in that prophecy that there's a half explanation as to, well, not a half explanation, but there is an explanation as to why Voldemort shows him. Because you see, in the prophecy, it says that, I'm going to paraphrase, but neither can live while the other survives, and basically that his match, Voldemort would choose who was going to be his match, his equal. So he's going to go after that person who is equal to his abilities, but they would fight each other. But it's not that they were going to kill each other because of the prophecy, but it's because Voldemort shows his rival, or who's going to be his nemesis, he's going to actively try to kill him. So the only way that the rival can stop Voldemort is by killing Voldemort. So it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, if you will. Not because it's a prophecy, but because Voldemort is taking it at that point. Unfortunately, this is also when Sirius Black, Harry's godfather, dies. He's murdered by Bellatrix Lestrange. And, well, now we're here, right? In the beginning of the 6th book. Now, what I'm going to preface is that with these books, we kind of gain a better insight into the magical community and how it expands farther than just Hogwarts. So we did learn that there is this climate of superiority where there are wizards who believe themselves to be superior, especially if they're purebloods. They say, oh, if one of your parents were a muggle, or if part of your family do not have any magic at all, then you're impure, therefore you're below me as someone who is pure blood. That's the type of thinking, that's the type of mentality. Or, oh, you're a centaur, or you're a hippogriff, you're a house elf, you're a goblin, you're not a human that can do magic, you're not a wizard, therefore you don't get a wand, therefore you are below us. And that's kind of the type of mentality, even in the Ministry. In the Ministry, they have Fountain, where all the magical creatures are depicted looking up to the witch and wizard, who have their wands held up high. And it's almost as if they were, the heroes and the ones that all others were looking towards. So it's kind of deeply ingrained, even though not everyone is in favor of this type of thinking, but it does exist. And so the reason I'm kind of mentioning this is because now that we're not just looking at magic in Hogwarts and not just magic in the magical community, at least in the United Kingdom, now we're also looking at how they interact with the Muggle world, the world where there is no magic. And so chapter 1, which is also very, very kindly known as the Other Minister. Now, the Other Minister is kind of a name that is given by the Minister of Great Britain, the Prime Minister. And the way it goes is that when there is a Prime Minister in the UK, they receive a visit from the Minister of Magic from the UK. And so they greet each other, and in this story we get kind of a picture from the other end, from the muggle, the normal person point of view. And so when he got into power, this prime minister, he was greeted late at night by Cornelius Fudge, who at that time was the Minister of Magic. Now they greet, and he says, well, I am the minister for our people who are witches and wizards. And the reason why he feels free that he can express this without putting the magical community out in the open is because, well, if you think about it, who is the prime minister going to tell? I mean, if he says that, oh, there's a wizard who visited me at night, he's most likely going to be impeached, or there's going to be somebody else who's going to replace him in his office. So that kind of guarantees silence. And obviously, past ministers, they don't want to be seen as crazy, so they also won't kind of reveal the secret with anyone. Now, at the time where in the third book, Prisoner of Azkaban, and Sirius Black escaped the prison of Azkaban, well, it was the duty of Cornelius Fudge to visit again the Prime Minister and let him know that, hey, there's a wizard who is known for killing people that can't do magic, for killing muggles. He's out on the loose, so you might want to keep an eye on that. Alright, nothing to it, he leaves. The next year, and keep in mind, Cornelius Fudge had told the Prime Minister that usually there is no reason to be contacted, so he's most likely going to be out of his mind. However, the following year, he comes back and tells him, well, you see, there's Dementors and etc. Okay. And we're also going to be transporting the dragons and sphinx and other creatures. It's going to be for the Triwizard tournament. Obviously, mention of dragons, and what did you say about dragons? But it's, it's treated like any other affair. The following year, however, he comes back, and this is when things get a little bit rocky, because now Cornelius Fudge is more down, more depressed, more serious. And the reason is that, if you remember, it's not just, how can I say this? It's not just that they have lost control of the ministry, now that the Dementors are no longer in Azkaban, but now you do have those who escaped from Azkaban, like Bellatrix Lestrange and other Death Eaters. Those same Death Eaters who were in the Ministry of Magic when Harry went to retrieve Sirius Black when he thought that he was there, and also the prophecy, which he didn't know that he was going to find in this place. And so we have that. Now that there are escape prisoners, now that the previously thought dead darkest wizard that they have known is also out, killing wizards, killing muggles, also destroying bridges, causing natural disasters. There's also giants that have joined Voldemort's ranks. Things are escalating very quickly, and now that all of this has happened, and after that year of this disinformation campaign, basically calling Harry and Dumbledore that they're liars and fake news in essence, then now he's no longer minister because he didn't do that great of a job. And then that's when he presents to him Rufus Scrimgeour, his successor. Rufus Scrimgeour, he arrives later on, and he's very direct, he's very to the point. He's not like Fudge, he doesn't entertain words, it's more to the point. Fudge already explained to you what I'm here for. I'm the new Minister of Magic. I'm going to have more security detail on you, which you didn't realize that you already have with Kingsley Shacklebolt, and we'll be in contact. And he leaves. That's, in essence, the conversation. Now, this gives us an idea that the magical community and the muggles, or the non-magical community, are very much related. They're close at hand. And one does affect the other. It's not that, oh, nothing will happen. Now, chapter 2, this is where we go into another story. Well, the story of other characters. So we have Bellatrix Lestrange and Narcissa Malfoy. And I say Narcissa Malfoy, but they're both sisters. And so, in case I didn't mention it, Bellatrix Lestrange is Narcissa's sister. That would make her Draco Malfoy's aunt, and she was also Sirius Black's cousin. I believe first or second cousin. And so they both arrive to this place, not a magical community, it's just this regular neighborhood called Spinner's End. They go and visit this house, and who opens the door is Peter Pettigrew. Now, Peter Pettigrew is not the actual host. That would be Professor Snape or Severus Snape. The reason why they're there is that Narcissa wants to talk to Snape about what Voldemort has planned for Draco, her son. And Narcissa is there to kind of convince her to not say anything because it is a secret mission. Professor Snape is already aware of what's going on. He's already aware of the plan. He still says that it's a bad idea to say anything, especially if you've been told not to say anything. But he's aware of what's going on, and he wants, in a sense, that he can help, but it's not that he can actually do the deed. He will step in at some point, but it's Draco's responsibility to carry out the mission for now, even though it might cost him his life. Narcissa, obviously, being the mother, she's very concerned. She doesn't want anything to happen to Draco. And so what they end up doing is Snape, he has a reputation. Now, the thing is that with Professor Snape, if you remember, he's a double agent. He works for Dumbledore, but he is pretending to still be a Death Eater on Voldemort's orders to spy on Dumbledore. So basically, he's a double agent pretending to be a double agent for Voldemort. Now, Bellatrix doesn't really trust Snape, especially because he wasn't in Azkaban, he wasn't in prison, he was at the school. It's understandable because, well, she had to suffer all that torture with the Dementors in Azkaban, as well as the others. And so they had a rough time. It's not fair that he didn't suffer a rough time. And also when Voldemort summoned the Death Eaters, he didn't arrive. So she's not really trustful of him. But Professor Snape, he really does answer her questions. He does really explain that, well, no. I mean, I've already talked to Voldemort. I went to Voldemort 2 hours later on Dumbledore's orders just to still maintain the facade that I'm still working for Dumbledore. And the reason why I didn't kill Harry is because if I did, Dumbledore would no longer protect me and I would be his enemy. But also I would no longer be at the school and no longer be able to gather information. And that, well, the reason that he can be trusted is because Voldemort trusts him. And nobody can fool Voldemort. If you doubt him, well, yeah, you don't want to doubt Voldemort because that would be a great offense. Now, and one thing to note, there's a lot of things to note, but Draco is perhaps one of Professor Snape's favorite students. Well, he actually is his favorite student. Professor Snape doesn't really like anybody. And so it's not that he doesn't have a heart, and he does do the unbreakable vow. The unbreakable vow is a type of magic where two people engage in this magical contract of sorts, and the reason why it's called the unbreakable vow is because you are compelled to carry on this vow. If you don't, then you lose your life. And so it is very important for you to, if you want to stay alive, to actually keep to your word. It is that strong of a vow, that strong of a charm, magic, however you want to call it. And so he does promise Narcissa that he would do anything and everything he can to help Draco, and that if it comes to it, he would do the deed. That deed being kill Dumbledore, which is obviously not an easy thing to do, and a reason why Voldemort is having a child in that sense, because we're talking about a 16-year-old. The reason why he's having a child try to accomplish this is because of Lucius's failed attempt at the Ministry of Magic to retrieve the prophecy, take it away from Harry, but he wasn't able to, and the prophecy ended up being destroyed. So Voldemort was no longer able to hear the complete prophecy. He was only aware of half of the prophecy because of Snape. Snape, when he heard the first half, he ran to tell Voldemort, but he never heard the complete prophecy, which is why it was crucial for him to have Harry pick it up, since his name is also on the prophecy, and then steal the prophecy from Harry. But that was a failed attempt, so in his anger and as punishment, he's having Draco do an incredibly dangerous task, regardless if he dies or not. Because best case scenario, he lives, he kills Dumbledore, he lives. There's that. Now you have one less threat, and it's easier to get to Harry. Now the worst case scenario is Draco dies trying to kill Dumbledore, and you don't lose any men. It's just one boy, or at least that's his thinking. But anyway, Snape does make the vow, so that in order to protect Draco. Now we are going to move along to the third chapter, and that's going to be the final chapter I'm going to kind of go over. In chapter 3, we have Will and Won't. This one is an interesting chapter, not to say the least. So Dumbledore if you remember in the Order of the Phoenix, Dumbledore was very distant with Harry. He kept himself separate. He didn't contact him. He wasn't as jovial. He kept Harry at his side. He even had Professor Snape teach Harry the crucial magic of occlumency to block Voldemort from invading his mind. Well, that didn't work. That was a failure completely. Not just because it's a hard magic to do, but also having Professor Snape and Harry, two people that have a history with each other, and especially Snape, who has a history with Harry's parents. You know, there's a certain animosity, and yeah, that was never going to work well. Now, Dumbledore had sent a message to Harry saying that he was going to go pick him up and take him to the Burrows. The Burrow being where the Weasleys live. And Harry wasn't really sure that was going to happen. He thought it was too good to be true. He actually didn't even prepare. More because he was kind of focused on what happened, will not happen, is this a dream? When Dumbledore arrives, the Dursleys are obviously shocked, but he goes in, introduces himself. Harry's also there, and it's kind of funny because Vernon, he's very adamant and very hostile towards magic or anything that is not normal, quote unquote. And so when Dumbledore arrives on his robes and just being his wizardry self, it's kind of funny because Vernon realizes that he can't bully Dumbledore, that he can't talk down to him. Uh, Dumbledore immediately sits them down in their couch by casting a spell so that the couch moves over, knocks them into the seats, and then move back into place. When the Dursleys don't offer any drinks, Dumbledore goes on about saying, well, expecting you to offer a drink would be very foolish, so I'm just going to go ahead and just serve drinks for everyone. And so he does conjure this drink and several flasks or cups or however you want to call them. And when the Dursleys repeatedly didn't take the drinks, Vernon does say, can you stop these cups from actually heating us? And Dumbledore, he obliges, but answers back, well, it would have been polite to accept a drink. But that was, it's a funny chapter. But it also gets to a crucial point, because Harry's now 16, and in the magical community, you are of age. You're legally an adult when you're age 17, not 18, 17. This also is a very important deadline, or an important point, a date, very important, because the moment Harry becomes an adult, the moment that he is 17, the protection that he had received from his mom, sacrificing herself for him, and also from the protections that Dumbledore had placed using that magic, they are going to break the moment that he is 17. And I can't stress this enough, but when Harry is 17, all magical protections on the home are going to disappear. That is why no Death Eaters have been looking for Harry or found him, or Voldemort hasn't even gone to try to kill Harry at that point, because they can't. There are just too many magical defenses based on kind of that magical, that very ancient magic of love, when Lily, Harry's mother, sacrificed herself for him. And so the kind of what the plan is going to be is that when Harry is 17, he's going to leave the house, but he is going to return that summer, just up until the day that he is 17. And so he does ask them, just take him for one more summer. You haven't been taking care of him, as I told you, but I am asking you, take him in one more summer. That is all he needs. And they don't really say it, but it is in agreement that they do. There's also the fact that when Sirius passed away, he left a will. In that will, he leaves all possessions. That is like the money in Gringotts, and also the house, the Grimmauld 12 place, something like that. And everything is now Harry's. However, part of the lineage, or part of the inheritance of the Blacks, is that everything passes on to the surviving male relative, or the surviving male wizard of the Black family. However, Harry is obviously not black. Harry is a Potter. And so Dumbledore's question is, well, legally, is everything going to be passed down, or is there some charm that's going to prevent this passing on to Harry going to happen? Because the issue is, if there is a charm and Harry doesn't get that inheritance, that means that the next surviving member, no longer male, but as the next surviving member, would be Bellatrix Lestrange. In Grimmauld Place, the headquarters of the Order of the Phoenix, has a lot of more charms, protections, defenses, and also the house elf creature. He has been there, and in essence, they can get more information from him, which would affect the plans, and it basically, it would be disastrous, because now they have a more secure headquarters for the Beaters. And also with Creature, they would get an insight on the information from inside Order of the Phoenix, being there for a long time. And so what Dumbledore does is that he simply conjures Creature there in the living room. And the thing is, if everything was able to be passed on to Harry, then Harry would become the new master, meaning that Creature now has to do everything that he says. And so he does. I mean, Creature starts in his tantrum of, I won't, blah, 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 blah. I belong with Bellatrix Strange and blah, blah, blah. And I won't. Well, this gets Harry's on his nerves, and he says, just shut up. And that's what he does. He quiets down. And so now that everything has been resolved, that yes, the headquarters, Creature, everything was able to be passed down to Harry. And also, Harry is going to come back for the next summer, and on his birthday, he's going to leave. Well, there it goes. Now they're ready to leave to the barrel. Or are they? We'll cover that on the next part. But in the meantime, see you then. Bye-bye.